Now, technically, in chemistry, if you have something that arrives by chance in the primordial slime, it's never actually happened, in my opinion, but if you did, you would have what's called a racemic mixture. In other words, an equal mixture of left and right-handed forms. Left-handed form, right-handed forms, roughly 50% of each. Now, would that be any good for human life? The answer is no, not at all, because the human life only uses only uses DNA in the right-handed form. So a bucket of DNA in the primordial slime would not be any good at all for human life. That's all the point I wanted to make on that one. So, excuse me, sorry, lost my place here a bit. I wanted to look at a little friend of ours. You might have seen him on television. He's called Dopey. Okay. Let's ask Dopey a question, shall we? I'm going to say, hello, Dopey, how are you today? He'll say, I'm fine, thanks. Well, I want you to have to put your thinking cap on, Dopey, and just, I want to tell you something. And I've got 3 things to tell you. First of all, that mathematically, DNA cannot arise by chance. It's not possible mathematically. And Sir Fred Hoyle, who is one of our most famous UK scientists, says it's simply impossible by chance. Got that, Dopey? Right. Secondly, even if they could arise by chance, it would not be possible for the DNA in the center of the cell to communicate with the periphery of the cell using messenger RNA unless an outside agency called God had programmed it. Got that, Dopey? Good. Third point, even if it was possible, which it isn't, but even if it was possible for DNA to evolve in the primordial slime in a big bucket, it would actually be useless for life. It would actually be useless for life, Dopey, because human life specifically needs right-handed DNA, or dextro-rotatory. A mixture of left and right-handed forms is absolutely useless. So I'll leave it to you, Dopey, to actually think which is more likely, that DNA was created by God or DNA was evolved in the primordial slime. You make the decision, and I'll leave it up to you. Right. Now, let's talking about our thinking, because all our what this program is all about is our thinking, and we're trying to change the way we all think, because we've been actually taught to think incorrectly, as I've told you. We need to actually look very hard at the way we think, because we're not thinking correctly. We were not formed in the primordial slime. No, we were created in the image of God. Now, there's our thinking man. Now, here's what a human cell looks like, and let me tell you, it's incredibly complicated. That's the next slide. We're not going to spend a lot of time now talking about the human cell, but we can now see, using special electronic microscopes, what a human cell looks like, and let me tell you, it's incredibly complicated. But the point is that when Darwin first wrote his book called The Origin of Species, which is actually the next slide, when he first wrote that, they didn't have the benefit of all these electronic high-power microscopes to see what a cell actually looks like. Now that actually, those are genes. What you're seeing now are genes. That's the book that Darwin wrote called The Origin of Species. And what, if we just stay on that, what actually Darwin said is that gene mutation causes a sort of an upward progression from simple life forms. By the way, there are no simple life forms because they've all got DNA in them, which is incredibly complex. But what he actually said was that DNA evolves by DNA modification to better life forms. Well, let me tell you that I've been a medical doctor for nearly 30 years, and I've seen DNA modification, and you probably have yourself as well. All we are familiar with DNA modification happens through radiation, chemicals, and disease. That's when you normally see DNA modification, or the results of it. And what you see are actually nasty diseases. I won't spend too much time on them, but what you actually see is, for example, Down syndrome, spina bifida, anencephaly, which means a baby born with no head, fetal abnormalities. You may have heard of the thalidomide problem. Pregnant women were given thalidomide, and they had fetal abnormalities. And then, of course, in Chernobyl in Russia, there was a nuclear explosion. A lot of people got cancer because of gene modification. And then, of course, in the Second World War, at the end of the Second War in Japan, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there was two massive nuclear explosions. And what happened is lots and lots of people got modified genes and got cancer, and lots of became infertile, died young, and all sorts of horrible things. Gene modification does not, in my experience, cause superhumans or anything else. In fact, God has actually put into our cells a way of actually making sure that DNA modification is actually corrected. DNA is self-correcting, and you can see that on the next slide. Self-correcting DNA. God has actually programmed into our 100 trillion cells self-correcting DNA. Now, I'm going to just tell you now that there are 1 million individual DNA molecular lesions per cell per day. I want to say that again. I want to emphasize that, if you look at me, is that in our human cells, we've got 100 trillion of them. Actually, DNA modification is incredibly common. It's incredibly common. It's happening all the time in all of your cells, all of the time. Of your 100 trillion cells, there are, in each individual cells, there are 1 million individual molecular lesions per cell per day. Now, do you see my point? Is that all these are corrected. They are all corrected. It's not like Darwin said at all, it happens occasionally. No, no, no. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. And mostly, they're all self-corrected. Let's read some figures. In each body, there are therefore 10 to the power of 18, that's 10 with 18 zeros after it, defects in every single cell of in every single cell of our body per day. In other words, gene modification is actually, or DNA modification, DNA going wrong, is more common than the number of atoms in the universe per day. So I think if evolution happens, we should see it all the time. But actually we don't. But it's actually DNA modifications happens all the time, but DNA is self-correcting, and that's why we don't see it. Right, so let's get this straight. The evolutionists have changed their mind, by the way. They now say that the Big Bang happened, on the next slide, about 13.7 billion years ago, somewhere around about that. And it all happens very slowly, but actually, this is how DNA, it proposed by Darwin that we became apes and then humans over millions of years because of DNA modification. But actually, Jesus Christ has programmed this highly, highly sophisticated genetic code with an inbuilt self-correcting mechanism. Let's make it simple. I've got loads of computers in my study. I've actually got 8 monitors in my study, and partly to prepare this thing, partly to do some other things as well. But let me tell you, those computers go wrong all the time. I'm not very clever at computers, so I've got a friend who comes to fix them all the time. They're always going wrong. And I bet you your computer's going wrong too. Well, your genetic code is far more sophisticated than an ordinary computer. Far, far more sophisticated. But the thing is that your computer, if it's like my computer, keeps going wrong. That's one of the reasons I have so many of them. But DNA doesn't. It's because God has, although it's very, very sophisticated, God has programmed it although it does go wrong, to be corrected. Now, here, example, are broken chromosomes. I don't know if you can see that next picture. You can see little chromosomes there with little dents in them. You probably need to take a look at a close-up, and you can see where the little blue arrows are. Those are broken chromosomes. Well, all the time, in all the cells of our body, our chromosomes are mended by God. So we get 1 million individual molecular lesions per cell per day, and all this is cleared up by DNA modification. I've actually used up too much time telling you all about it, so let's move on to the end of this, and let's just move on to, I'm sorry about this, but slide 20. Life did not arise by chance in the primordial slide, in the primordial slime. The evolutionists like us to think that DNA arose by chance in the primordial slime. It did not. There wasn't a big bang of lightning and life suddenly evolved. No, DNA shows it couldn't possibly have happened that way. What did happen Oh, I'm just going to read to you an alternative definition of atheism, which you might find interesting if you look at the next picture. This is an alternative definition of atheism. It's the belief that there was once absolutely nothing at all. Nothing happened to the nothing until the nothing magically exploded for no reason, creating everything everywhere. Then a bunch of exploded nothing rearranged itself into all the plants, fish, birds, and animals. And the animals which came from nothing included apes. And the apes magically changed into everyone, including you and me. But some of the clever monkeys didn't change into you and me, and everyone that came from the monkeys, that came from nothing, think that we Christians are nuts. Maybe that's why monkeys like nuts and most people behave like monkeys. I'm just being silly, really. Now, what is actually the truth? Jesus said, this is what Jesus actually said. There's a picture of Jesus there. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life in John 14:6. And he said, thy word is truth in John 17. This is what Isaiah said. He said, do you know, in Isaiah 40, he said, do you not know, have you not heard, the Lord is an eternal God, the creator of the whole universe. He doesn't get tired or weary. There is no limit to his wisdom. Moses said in Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. No, we are created in the image of God. In our body, we have a spirit. There's a human spirit. And the body without a spirit is dead. And if you're alive, you've got a spirit, according to the scriptures anyway. And you have a genetic code which is absolutely fantastic and amazing. It's human DNA. And there's another picture of human DNA. So I hope you're enjoying this. We'd love some feedback. If you've got anything to say about this series of programs, please send us an email to info@revelationtv.com. I'll say it again, info@revelationtv.com. It's all about changing our thinking so we see ourselves created in the image of God. Bless you for joining us, and join us next time for more material on To the Point about the human body. Bless you. Thank you.
Those who come to me will never be hungry. Those who believe in me will never be thirsty. Now I told you that you have seen me, but will not believe. Everyone whom my Father gives me will come to me. I will never turn away anyone who comes to me, because I have come down from heaven to do not my own will, but the will of him who sent me. And it is the will of him who sent me that I should not lose any of all those he has given me, but that I should raise them all to life on the last day. For what my Father wants is that all who see the Son and believe in him should have eternal life. And I will raise them to life on the last day.